and welcome to Newfoundland and Labrador Studies 2205. This is Unit 2, The Roots of Our Culture. I'm Miss Fleming, your instructor for this course, and this is Section 6, Lesson 2 on Responsible Government. Responsible government was modelled after the British parliamentary system. Executive Council, which we call the Cabinet today, was drawn mostly from members of the political party holding the most seats in the House of Assembly. And most times the leader of that party would be the Prime Minister. So let's take a look at the structure. The structure of responsible government is very similar to our governmental structure today, actually. This was a solution to the conflicts over the elected House of Assembly and the appointed Legislative Council. The leader of the party with the most seats became Premier, or the Prime Minister, which came after 1909, when Newfoundland became the Dominion of Newfoundland. And the appointed Legislative Council became a separate body with the power to reject and review legislation. So everything you see here in blue were from the elected members. We have the House of Assembly, and then the Executive Council, later called the Cabinet, were chosen from the House of Assembly, so they were still elected people, and the Cabinet included the Premier or Prime Minister. Now, there was still a Legislative Council and a judiciary, which were appointed by the governor. Responsible government did not mean complete autonomy, though. The British government retained the final say on colonial legislation and on external affairs. There was still a governor, appointed by the British government. While the Premier or Prime Minister recommended to the members of the Executive Council or Cabinet, or Legislative Council and Judiciary, the governor did appoint them officially. Men from the French shore were granted the right to vote during this period in 1882, followed by women in 1925, but Indigenous people still did not have the right to vote in this time period. As well, Labrador was still excluded until 1946. Let's talk about some of these early governments. One of the first challenges of this government was accommodating religious and ethnic differences. This was mainly on denominational lines of Christianity and heritage. The push for responsible government was made by an alliance between Roman Catholics, which were represented by the Liberal Party, and members of the Methodist Church. Both groups felt disempowered, observing unfair exclusion from power and government jobs. And by 1860, the coalition between Catholics and Methodists began to fall apart. And the mostly Protestant conservatives took power in 1861 when they were appointed by the governor at the time, so they weren't elected in. They began accommodating other groups and parties, and began an unwritten rule of enduring denominational compromise. This compromise led to offices, judicial appointments, and school grants being more fairly shared. The image to the right there is Philip Little, and he was a premier in 1860. Let's talk about sovereignty and economic development. During the first 50 years of responsible government, there were two main areas of concern, which were sovereignty and economic development. Even though they were self-governing, relationships with other countries were dictated by the Colonial Office and the British government, whose mandate was the betterment of the British Empire as a whole. Newfoundland wanted to exercise control involving the French treaty shore and negotiating a trade deal with the United States. Many people in Newfoundland at this time were becoming concerned with the reliance on the cod fishery and believed future growth should be based on the North American model with diversification of industry. An excellent example of this was the installation of the Newfoundland Railway. This image here is from Port aux Basques when the railway was completed. So now it's time to review. I'm going to ask you to complete the activities I have for you in Brightspace, and I hope you have a great day.